It's Behind Enemy Lines here on the Blood Red channel, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. With the Reds out to turn the theatre of dreams into the stage of nightmares once more as they head to take on arch rivals Manchester United on Monday night. Coming up, we'll discuss the Red Devils' start to the new season, the impact or lack of Erik Ten Hag has managed to have at Old Trafford, and plenty more besides. To get into all of that, pleasure to welcome Rich Fay, Manchester United, from the Manchester Evening News across enemy lines here on the Blood Red channel. Rich, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Don't know what to expect ahead of Monday. Like I said, we'll get into that. But sun's shining. What could possibly go wrong for United after those two opening defeats?
Yeah, Brighton and Brentford. I suppose let's start even before then. And Erik Ten Hag's appointment. Of course, it was much talked about throughout the course of last season. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, of course, leaving in the autumn, and ever since then, it seemed to be a two-horse race between Ten Hag and Maurizio Pochettino. Finally announced in April before taking over in the summer. There was much fanfare to him coming in. It seems to have dissipated quite quickly.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it was a two-horse race. I think supporters just wanted something new, something different, really. I mean, United have gone down every single sort of route. If you're going down sort of manager profiles, they've had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the former player. They've had Louis van Gaal, this, veteran of the game who's done it all before. Jose Mourinho, who, was the chosen one at the time for United. He was the ideal candidate, and they haven't worked out. So Ten Hag was this sort of why not? Why not take the risk? I know his success was limited to Dutch football, but he had good pedigree in the Champions League, built two good Ajax teams as well, particularly the second team after he'd already sold Frenkie de Jong to Barcelona, sold Matthijs de Ligt to Ajax. Obviously, Van der Beek was to leave for United as well 2 years ago, and he has that pedigree. There's no denying that, but I think quickly fans have realised that there is a big difference between the Eredivisie and the Premier League, and I think Ten Hag has slowly come to terms with realising that yes, Ajax are a massive club, United are a behemoth. This is an even bigger challenge on his hands now, and it's not just about getting the team playing right. There's so much off-field issues at United to deal with as well, particularly with the fresh protests over the Glazer ownership, which should probably be the backdrop to the game on Monday.
Yeah, there's a web that's been tangled, isn't it? And he's kind of there trying to undo all the knots that have kind of been tied up. But looking at the first couple of games, to me, the thing that really does strike, and you mentioned obviously he's managed in the Eredivisie, but he's managed also and come through with Ajax within a system where the playing identity is so well ingrained in what they do. You reeled off the different managers there and the takes on which they've had with the squad. I mean, even you cast your eye back to last summer, and it looked as though Solskjaer had kind of finally maybe implemented a bit of what he wanted. He had a number of domestic players in the team, a number of young players. He kind of crowned that all off with Jadon Sancho's arrival, and then just on top of that, dumped Rafael Varane and Cristiano Ronaldo, two veterans, and have won an awful lot in their careers. And Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, a fantastic player, but it seemed to jerk with what he'd been doing prior. And now Ten Hag seems to have a squad that you just look at the goalkeeper, doesn't seem to be capable really of what he wants to do, and probably caught in two minds himself now as to whether he doubles down on his principles or has to try and alter things slightly and go against the grain.
Yeah, he's made some very big calls there. I think what is interesting for me is if you look at that lineup that he's used in the first few games and the team he's inherited, De Gea, Alex Ferguson signing. You've got Luke Shaw in there, who's Van Gaal signing. You've still got Mourinho signings. You've got Solskjaer signings. It's still, and now you've got Ten Hag signings. That is still a real melting pot of players. Where I think if you look at Liverpool and look at Man City, that is a squad that the managers have curated themselves as the cherry picked talent across Europe. They've got a team that not only plays their way, but it's the personnel they want as well. Ten Hag is still so early on into this United rebuild, and it is crucial they have patience because there's still going to be questions about him as a manager, and he's still very open to criticism. You can't just brush that aside and say, well, the owners are the problem. He's not got the squad he wants. Ten Hag still has these faults, and I think the team he put out against Brentford last weekend, that was an Ajax team that goes and plays Heerenveen or Go Ahead Eagles, where he doesn't have to worry about having defensive solidity and he doesn't really worry about the opposition too much. Premier League's very different in that aspect. So Ten Hag still is culpable for some of the issues, but it is still so early on in that process. I think that there still needs to be extensive squad overhaul. Like you said, he's made a bit bold call on the goalkeepers. I I think that's already backfired, and I can't see that sort of ending well for him this season, because that is just a square peg in a round hole. De Gea does not play that style of football. No other manager's been able to change that. The reason he doesn't play for Spain is because he doesn't fit their system of play. Ten Hag has to have self-belief, but that stinks of arrogance for me. And I think he needs that real reality check that, yes, he's got ideas of how he wants to change United, but there's a reason why some of these changes haven't happened already. I know Solskjaer was limited as a manager, but if he thought that De Gea could play out from the back, he would have tried it himself. He knew it couldn't happen, so he didn't do it. All these other managers have seen those shortcomings and avoided them, but Ten Hag seems to be walking into these traps. So, yeah, it's still two minds. It's still very early on, and I know that I think everyone watching this probably has watched all, and I think you only have to go to see how Arsenal started last season, that the first 3 games don't necessarily dictate how the entire season goes. And I think, I think you always have to give anyone 5 games before you seriously can judge them. And for United, I think it is very premature to be writing them off entirely, particularly because if they win on Monday, they go ahead of Liverpool, and you can cue a million tweets saying which is the team in crisis then. But United have a lot of work to do. They need patience, and the fact of the matter is they've stuck with Ten Hag. Now they need to back him.
Yeah, and I suppose within that, I mean, you look at the clubs who have set the standard in Liverpool and Manchester City over the last 5 years or so. Jurgen Klopp came in November, had pretty much a 3/4 of a season or 2/3 of a season to look at his squad and decide what he wanted to do before then altering it. Had then a year out of Champions League football to really concentrate on getting that qualification. Pep Guardiola, his first season almost ended without Champions League qualification at Manchester City, saw the shortcomings of his squad, brought in his new fullbacks, really kind of changed the way in how he made that City team operate, and saw immediate success with that. So I take your point on that with Erik Ten Hag, but equally, as you say, he is culpable for some of the issues. And I think sort of onlookers from afar, the Lisandro Martinez deal, a few people have scratched their head at. He's a 5'9" centre half, really capable of playing in a back three. In a back two. Should he not be a back three or even a fullback? And equally on Christian Eriksen, starting as a false 9 1 week and then as a deep lying midfielder the next.
Yeah, again, for me, that just stinks of a manager who, look, Ten Hag built a great Ajax team the second time around, but it's a great Ajax team built of Premier League rejects. You've got Steven Bergwijn, who's just gone there. Sebastian Haller was the main man up front. Dusan Tadic, there's these players who didn't necessarily do great in the Premier League. You've got David Klaassen there, who used to play for Everton, and it was awful. There's a completely different standard in Dutch football than there is in English football, and that's going to be found out very soon. Lisandro Martinez was the centre-back that Ten Hag wanted. United themselves, the hierarchy, had identified other targets. Pau Torres at Villarreal was deemed the most attainable and most suitable left-footed centre-back if he wanted one. He said, no, I want Lisandro Martinez. I know what he does. Obviously, clips will go viral of him whenever he gets beaten for a header, etc. That his height wasn't the problem against Brentford, but they were targeting him a lot. He still has to build that centre-back partnership with Maguire. I think it can come good. So I will give him lenience on that and say, if that's what he's done, stick with him for a few weeks, and you've got to just build upon that. Although the news is that it might be Rafael Varane who partners him against Liverpool on Monday night instead of Maguire, a candidate to be dropped from the starting lineup. Christian Eriksen, again, that just stinks of United just in recent years. There's no other team that would have bought him to be a starter. He came to United to be a squad player, and already he's been promoted to that starring role. Like you said, started as a false 9, then goes to a deep line midfield role. They just don't know how to use him already. And that sums Ten Hag up the most for me. He's got the players he wanted, but he doesn't know how to use them. Malacia doesn't start quite yet. Martinez, like you said, there's the doubts there. Eriksen, squad player who's already starting. And United just don't have a long-term plan, and it all comes to that. And again, that stems from the top, from the owners and the wrong hierarchy, below them. But it comes down to Ten Hag as well. He doesn't have that long-term vision, really, of what he wants for this United side, because if he did, Eriksen wouldn't be starting these games, and he'd have a clearer idea of the type of players maybe he does want to bring in. He's gone from chasing Frenkie de Jong all summer to now inadvertently stumbling across Casemiro, 2 completely different types of midfielders. So what is it that United actually want? They still don't quite know, and the jury is very much out on his recruitment side of things. But this is the United side that should be performing a far, far greater standard than they are doing already. And yeah, Monday's a real chance for both sides, but particularly United to make a statement, and for Ten Hag as well to prove that he really can do it against the best managers and teams in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. How big is that central midfield chasm then that has appeared at Old Trafford? I mean, what are we into a fourth season of Fred and McTominay looking as though they're the first choice central midfield pairing? I mean, derided on social media over the last few years anyway, and yet United still sort of seem to persist. You look at the centre half options, and personally, I don't think Harry Maguire's as poor a player as he's made out to be. I mean, Manchester City were interested in him when United bought him. They don't often sort of go for duds too often in the transfer market, albeit maybe their centre half recruitment has been questionable over the years. Varane has been a serial winner in his career. Lindelof looked very good during the previous World Cup with Sweden in a compact unit as well. To me, it seems to be what's in front of them exposes them so often. And as I say, that chasm has arrived there, and we're into the final 2 weeks of the transfer window and still not been addressed for United.
Not addressed yet. Casemiro looks like it will be done, won't be registered in time to play against Liverpool on Monday, though I was told early on Friday morning, I was told by a source, no chance that would be done in time for him to feature on Monday night. But I think Casemiro will come in and do that. The problem for United is that the choices they've got are very contrasting. I mean, I think it will be Fred and McTominay again on Monday night. And strangely, I think that's the type of game that suits them. When United are out of possession, can adopt the underdog tag, and the midfield's responsibility is just to sort of harass their opponents, to pressurize them, force them into errors, then Fred and McTominay are quite good at that. You know, they've got the mobility, but they're very restrictive when they're in possession of the ball. They can't break through the lines, distribution's poor, they've got the first touch of a trampoline between them. But against Liverpool, they might be able to embrace that underdog stature again, like they did under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. There's space when Liverpool push up high. We've seen that in the opening 2 games of this season. So I think that, strangely enough, Fred and McTominay are a decent sort of selection for the bigger games, but it's games when United are in possession and the onus is on them to take the game to their opposition. As we saw against Brighton, we saw against Brentford, United just couldn't do that. But when they play on a counter-attack, it's a midfield unit that they can get away with. Obviously, it's not ideal. The dream is them to go, toe-to-toe with Liverpool and City, which I think Casemiro might be able to bring, and they might be able to do that for a short time. But you're right, that for me, the reason why United do leak so many goals is because they're so easy to play through. And whenever you can see the goal, you can blame the centre-backs. That's the obvious route to take. But the real problem is that midfield and the lack of protection they get from there. So it's a massive game for them. And, I do think that the best chance of United getting a victory, oddly enough, is with Fred and McTominay, just because United will be the underdogs and they will be the team who are likely to have less of the ball. And I think that could suit them if they, go into accepting that their best chance of getting a result is by trying to hit Liverpool on the counter-attack. Again, though, the worry is Ten Hag wants to go proactive. He wants to play Liverpool at their own game. And if he does that, it could be another massacre.
Yeah, we'll get on to, as you say, what could actually happen on the pitch. But before that, let's go back to rosier times. And these two sides have already faced each other since Erik Ten Hag has been in the dugout. Of course, out in Thailand in pre-season, it was a convincing win for Manchester United. Read what you can into a first pre-season outing for the two sides. But on that occasion, Anthony Martial was available, was playing up front, and it seemed to click and look dynamic at the top end of the pitch for Manchester United. He's obviously unavailable for this one, and so we move on to Cristiano Ronaldo. Where do you want to start, Rich?
Where do you start on that one? Yeah, and I mean, pre-season, let's just push that to one side. That does not matter. It just does not matter at all. I'm not even going to entertain that. But it is interesting, the fluid front three. That's where United have their best joy, when they've got these free forwards who can all interchange and, cause that movement, wreak havoc. They've been great. And I do think Rashford, Sancho, Martial is a good front three, like I said, because it's got so much movement and so much fluidity to it. And every one of those players can play in each of the other positions, really. They can really adjust on the fly, and they can really terrorize a defense that's not well drilled. But the problem, like you said, is that won't be happening this weekend. So it falls to Ronaldo. And Ronaldo, is he the problem? Is he the problem solver? Last season, he scored goals, but he detracted from the way that United play football. You can't deny that at all. He wants to leave. Everyone's well aware of that. And from a political point of view, you've got to get rid of any player who doesn't fully believe and isn't fully committed to the system. And he said that he's going to give this interview in the coming weeks where all the truths will be laid bare on the table. Which colour kit he'll be wearing at that moment in time remains to be seen. But Ten Hag changed his mind on Ronaldo. He is now more open to getting rid of him. But United, from their own point of view, will want it to be a financially lucrative deal, really. Not necessarily in terms of a big transfer fee, but someone has to pay all those wages, so you can't be loaning him out if a team's not going to do that. You've got to remember the commercial value Ronaldo has as well. He's a marketing behemoth himself, and United shirt sales with Ronaldo on the back are still, the top seller at the megastore. He is still such a big part of everything they do away from the footballing side of things, which sums United up. They think is a business, not a football club. In terms of what we might see from on Monday, if fit, he has to start. And Ronaldo himself was reliable in some of the big games last season. He got that hat-trick against Tottenham, which was crucial. He got some big goals in the Champions League as well. The issue, though, is against Man City and Liverpool last season, he was completely anonymous. He did nothing. And he also, he has such high standards that when United aren't performing well, which could be the case on Monday, he is such a negative to have on the pitch because he does strop, he does get angry, gets frustrated, and that, falls into his teammates as well. And they all look up to him as the pinnacle and that leader on the pitch. So when things aren't going right, Ronaldo really can be a problem. And I think he is the only option that I'd have to start up front on Monday. So they've got to go for that. He should have the drive. He should have this determination to prove he can still do it against the elites, because he's not done that. The goals in the Champions League came against decent sides, Villarreal, Atalanta, but they aren't the big boys of Europe, are they? And Tottenham, it's Tottenham. It's not Man City. It's not Liverpool. He still has to do that. And since he's been back at United, he's not performed in one of these massive games yet. So the onus is on him to do it. And if he says he's, worthy of still playing in the Champions League, go and prove it.
Yeah, you say there is he the problem? Is he the problem solver? I mean, at the stage of his career he's at, as you say, the wage he's on as well. I mean, if you had to sort of stick your head on the line and sort of say by the 1st of September, will he be at United or not? I suppose the indication now feels more he won't be, but it's by what course that action may well be executed. As you referenced Arsenal before, they kind of had to write off a number of big contracts to get themselves to a starting point of getting back to where they wanted to be. And it does feel as though the longer he lingers, the worse the kind of acidity of his personality will come out, and the worse the effect it could have on the dressing room.
Absolutely. But Arsenal have a plan. Manchester United don't have a long-term plan, so they can't maybe commit to those ruthless decisions of, right, this player doesn't fit, get rid of him. It's a short-term loss for a long-term gain. We've got to take the hit. United don't have that plan, so I don't think they can sanction those sort of ruthless decisions as easily as Arsenal did. And Ronaldo, from my personal point of view, he has to go. He has to go because he doesn't want to be there. But who wants him? Nobody. None of the elite teams want him. And you see, maybe I go back to Sporting Lisbon, but can they afford him? I don't think they can. And his wage demands are so big. Yes, his commercial value will benefit any team who takes him on, but it's such a big risk and such a big hit for any other side. And he's almost priced out of a move before deadline day. Someone's got to have to compromise. Ronaldo's either got to lower his demands, or United are going to have to, like I said, consider terminating his contract. But the word from United has always been that he's not for sale. That has been their official stance throughout the entire summer. So it's a fascinating one, and it's a real sort of power play. And again, Ten Hag's first summer in charge, he needs to stamp his authority. And if Ten Hag believes that Ronaldo should be allowed to go, the club have to back him. And if they don't, they're just repeating the mistakes of the past.
Yeah, no, we've spoken then about kind of the Manchester United transfers, the style of play Ten Hag has tried to instill thus far, as well as Cristiano Ronaldo as well. Let's talk about last season. From a Liverpool perspective, it's great to talk about. From a Manchester United one, not so much. 9-0 aggregate win, 5-0 at Old Trafford. I mean, if something similar were to be served up at Old Trafford on Monday night, what do you think the reception, the reaction, and I suppose just the feel around Manchester United would be. Would that be the low point, or do you think there's even further for them to sink?
I think Brentford's at the low point for me because against Liverpool, you can almost hold your hands up to a degree and say they are the better team. Everyone knows that. They've got a manager who's way further down down the timeline with his project. They've got a team that we said is catered to for his needs and his style of play. They are one of the best teams in the world, one of the best Premier League teams of all time. So I think you can hold your hands up to a degree and say, look, they are just better than us. That's not a surprise. And I don't think it would be a surprise if Liverpool came and won 3-4-0 again. I don't think that is. And I think also from that point of view, like we said, there's got to be the protests on Monday. If United then went out and got a result, it would be papering over the cracks. It would be giving this false optimism and people really saying, well, it's not as bad as people are saying. Then why are United fans getting so upset? Because they can still beat Liverpool on their day. That's not the point. There's a far bigger picture here for United fans. So I think that a defeat obviously would dampen the mood, but it would almost prove United fans' point that there is a lot of work to do. And you've gone and you've got the manager you wanted. You've got some of the players he wanted, Casemiro possibly about to join, and you're still getting absolutely embarrassed by your fiercest rivals. I think it just emphasises the anger at United, really, and the golfing class and the fact that this isn't a quick fix. So I don't think it would be, end of the line already. Like we said, it's only 3 games into the season as well. So you'd be stupid to be too rash and reactionary off that. Obviously, United would then need to respond. But for me, the low point was Brentford. It doesn't get any lower than that. And that's no offence to them. They're such a good team. And Klopp said in his press conference as well that, you've got to give them more respect and realise how good they are. That is true. But Brentford are, not a traditional top side and a team who United, with all respect, should be putting in a far better showing against. So for me, I think the low point's already been, and the Liverpool game, certainly not a free hit. Certainly they need to put in a much improved performance at least. And, if United were to lose 2-0 but play much better and feel hard done by, then that is a positive. That's something to build upon. If they get thrashed, like I said, it only emphasises just how irate the fans are already and the need for change at the top of the club and the fact that they need to stick by Ten Hag because there isn't a quick fix available for them.
Yeah, you mentioned anger. I suppose is it even apathy at this point? What is the mood amongst the fan base? As you say, there's going to be the protests that are planned for the game. Obviously, we saw what happened. Obviously, during pandemic ball at Old Trafford when fans stormed the pitch and actually the game was abandoned. I mean, what is the overall feeling within the fan base now? Is it just desolation at what has happened to Manchester United?
Absolutely, and supporters would. I've spoken to lots of supporters. I've seen the sort of mood on social media as well. Fans would write off this season if it meant there was a change of ownership. They would take that short-term hit for a long-term gain because they're just disgusted and feel so disillusioned and disenchanted with the way the team's being run. And, even last season, it was the worst statistical ever, Premier League season. But of course, football didn't begin in 1992. But United fans would say that is the worst United side they've ever seen, even worse than the side that got relegated, because the side from last season wasn't reflective of the hard-working ethic of the working class fans. There was just nothing to relate and nothing likable about that side at all. So United fans just feel really disillusioned. They're well aware that their football club is a business first and foremost. They're well aware that commercial success is all that matters to the owners. They've got owners who don't invest money, who take money from the club. Debts have risen to £500 million almost, and gross debt with all the overdraft takes it closer to 600 million. So there's a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, and it's starting to feel like with all the takeover news this week that there could be light at the end of the tunnel. But United fans know there's a lot of fight to give yet. But the entire mood is just one of anger, frustration, and disillusionment, really, because they love this club. You can't turn off your love for a club. It's in your blood. You've done it since you were a kid, and that's always going to be ingrained in you. And United fans would love it, absolutely love it, to go Kevin Keegan if they beat Liverpool on Monday. That is what means the most, isn't it? Because that is the most fierce rivalry in English football, and those two sides absolutely hate each other. And of course, you want the bragging rights. But if you said to a United fan, Liverpool win 5-0 on Monday, but you get the takeover complete, I think they'd all snap your hand off at that, because there's a wider picture at play here, and United fans are just fed up, and they know that a win against Liverpool will paper those cracks, but it won't solve anything long term.
It's mad, isn't it? Because when you listen to you speaking there, effectively, if a takeover is to happen, I mean, get your opinion on that after, but just before that, you look at it. This season, we're 2 games in, and probably Manchester United fans ready to near on write off what is going to happen in terms of actually whether they'll get into the Champions League. There were even some thinking United were going to bounce back towards kind of challenging or even finishing third this season, which seems absolutely remarkable now. But if a takeover is to happen, that's then going to take another drawn out process, and effectively would just be 2 seasons written off from finishing second. Now, that albeit could be labelled as a false position, given it was played largely behind closed doors. But a club of Manchester United's size and stature surely can't just be writing off 2 seasons as early into campaigns as they did last year when they let Solskjaer go, and then just tread water for the remainder of the season, and then this year go, well, not quite Ten Hag's team yet. Let's just wait and see where we finish and deal with it next summer.
Again, comes back to the long-term plan. They don't think long-term, so they'll say, "Well, this season we can take the hit, and then next season we'll be better." But they don't have a plan in place to do that. So
I was going to say, what was the plan last season then? If it was, oh, let's
exactly.
sack Solskjaer, wait for the new manager, surely that idea was, well, next season we're going to hit it hard. When they've stalled and stuttered in the transfer market, and the team look worse than they were last year.
Well, the pieces have changed, but the puzzle's still the same. United have had some hierarchical, overhauls in the summer, but still the same people in the same roles effectively, and nothing has changed. And that's the whole point. They've still got an unproven manager in charge. They've got a team that's not fit for purpose, that's been neglected for years, and nothing's going to change until there is drastic overhaul on the ownership side of things, because United are just going in this just draining cycle, and it's just tedious, and it feels like Groundhog Day. And like you said, the second place finish a few years ago did give this false illusion, because you get lots of United fans now on social media saying, "Oh, Solskjaer wasn't the problem altogether," and of course Solskjaer wasn't the main problem, but he was a problem. You can't ignore that, because he was tactically limited. United were playing dreadful football, and you can blame the owners for a large chunk of things at United, because, like we said, it's just such a tedious, repetitive process. But at the end of the day, there's a football team there that should be doing a lot better, and the managers should be getting a lot more from their squad. United just need fresh investment, and they need that fresh belief, really, because it just feels like it's come to the end of the cycle. And, it reminds me of when AC Milan had all those years just in the doldrums, and every season did seem to be written off for them because there was no sort of hope of it ever getting better. And United just need that fresh belief for me. And I think that the fans and everyone else is just down on their sorrows, really, and they're just feeling sorry for themselves a bit, which is understandable. But they're not going to get much sympathy from the wider football world. We all know that. They'll be saying this is karma for the spoiled 90s and the noughties that they had with unrivaled success. So it's a really difficult one, because, like you said, it is really easy just to say, will the ownership change things? Because it might not. But I really do think that United being held back by owners who just simply aren't interested at all, and it all stems from that.
Yeah, no, definitely. As you said there, though, not going to be much sympathy coming from the red half of Merseyside towards Manchester. That's for sure. In terms of any potential takeover, then what's the stance on that? Because start of the week there were murmurs coming out that the Glazers would be open to selling a minority stake in the club, and all of a sudden it's sort of snowballed to actually could a full scale takeover be on the cards?
It's a really interesting one. There's been lots of conflicting reports on that. So what we know is it does sound like the Glazers are well aware that they either need fresh investment or potential full-on sale to address the cash flow issues at the club, because, like I said, debt is continuously rising. They've just managed to factor that in as a sort of general business expense at this stage in time, because the commercial and marketing growth and the TV revenues are back after the COVID pandemic. So United are, fine day to day, really, but they have got this debt which is just lurking in the background. And as things stand, the Glazers are aware that that's going to have to be eased at some point in time. When we, officially sort of went to the club in the week for a stance, they just refused to comment on the rumours at all. We know Sir Jim Ratcliffe has made it clear publicly that he would be interested if the opportunity came about. United, I still think, like I said, it's a long process. I can't see this just happening overnight, but there are, murmurs that the Glazers are certainly more open to a full sale of the club. the family are aware of the protests, and you've got the sponsors as well being affected by the Glazers Out campaign on social media, fans looking to boycott anyone associated with the club as well. So the protests are certainly having an effect. They're certainly being felt across the pond. But like you said, I believe it when I see it, because it is still such a big process to go through. It would take so much money to buy the Glazers out. You've then got the debt to clear. You've got a team that needs investment, and you've got a stadium that needs to be, rejuvenated or rebuilt even. So it's a massive, massive amount of money that would be required. And, saying you want to buy a club is very different in actually going ahead and doing it. So still very early days, still lots of cautiousness about this one. I wouldn't be getting too carried away saying something's imminent, because I really don't think it is. And, I think it probably, no matter what happens, I think it would start off with the Glazers selling a smaller percentage of what they own already to improve the cash flow, to get some money back into the club. But I can't see it going into a full sale straight away. I think there will be steps towards that.
Yeah, no, interesting to see how it plays out then. Right, Rich, before you go, prediction time. We've got to get your take on what is going to happen on the pitch on Monday night. We talked around it plenty, but how do you think it'll play out in the end? You've said 3-0, you've said 5-0. Where are you hedging your bets?
Well, because it's a Liverpool podcast, I'm going to say 2-0 Liverpool. I think they are they're a far better team. They're still getting into their groove already. The players, are still learning kind of how they adapt with life after Mane. Obviously, Nunes won't be available, but I still think there's a few little teething issues here. That obviously the injury worries as well for Liverpool going into the game, and confidence maybe a bit knocked after the opening 2 matches, but they usually do respond in style. So I'm still backing Liverpool to win. Obviously, the devil's advocate in me is saying United could do something, because if United adopt that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer-esque counter-attacking style of play, appreciate they're the underdogs, I think they can have real joy in the counter-attack. I really, could see them maybe scraping a draw, because, that's when United play best. But I don't think Ten Hag would do that. It's United at home. He's not won a game yet, and he's got that self-belief / arrogance that he can actually beat Liverpool at their own game. So I think United will go proactive. I think it's very risky. The risk might pay off, but I would say 2-0 Liverpool.
Right, interesting. We'll have to wait and see how it does play out. Rich Fay from the Manchester Evening News then joining us here on Behind Enemy Lines as we look ahead to Monday night's clash with Manchester United at Old Trafford. Do make sure to stick across everything on the Liverpool Echo website, as well as here on the Blood Red channel. Plenty of reaction to the game to come. But for now, from myself, Guy Clarke, and Rich Fay, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.